Story 1. At 20, I would have bought a stupid car, a stupider boat, a house, and a bunch of weed and booze. A few months later, I would have sold the car and the boat to try to keep the house. Then I would have moved back into my old apartment and gotten my old job back. Would have been a fun year, though. Story 2. My friend's parents died when he was a teenager. This was 30 years ago, but he was able to buy a small two-story downtown building in a small town and rented out the bottom to retail. He hired a local manager on the first day and has spent almost no effort on the building. That was and is his income today. Whether kiteboarding in Mexico or surfing in Hawaii, he just gets money deposited every month. On the top floor, he was able to store his belongings, sleep there sometimes, or rent it out to others, depending on his situation. Story 3. I would like to say that I would have saved it, invested it, and so on. When I was 20, I was very depressed. I would have spent it all on cosmetic surgery and new clothes. Story 4. Boy, back then my 20-year-old self would blow that $1 million. I'd be passed out drunk and high behind the casino. But my 32-year-old self would pay off my debt and pay back my mom and buy her a house for always being the light in my dark, moonless world. Story 5. High-yield savings for at least 1 year. Get a certified public accountant or other financial advisor and go from there. 1 year to sit and not let the sudden influx rush to my head or cause impulse buying, and also a year to realistically evaluate goals and work with the advisor to find the best places to put it to match those goals, since I don't know anything about finances and would likely go bankrupt otherwise. Story 6. High-yield savings account. It's easy to set up and transfer. 3 to 5% return, no risk, taxable though. It's like income without working. That's $30,000 to $50,000 a year by doing nothing. Literally. Story 7. 20 years old? 2 chicks at the same time. 40 years old? 2 chicks at the same time. 60 years old? 2 chicks at the same time. 80 years old? 2 chicks at the same time. What can I say? I'm a consistent individual. Story 8. I would have died from drinking too much, then snorting cocaine out of a stripper's ass. There was no way I was remotely responsible enough to handle that kind of money. Hell, I couldn't handle making $1,200 a month at that age. Story 9. Not waste the last 14 years of my life getting degrees that either go nowhere or are nearly impossible to get a job in. And I was 20 in the tail end of 2010. Bitcoin did not start taking off until 2013. It was 0.30 per Bitcoin in 2010. With $500,000, I could buy 1,666,666 Bitcoins. 1,666,666 Bitcoins at current prices would be $161,756,376,964.09. Story 10. Travel to some locations and buy a house in the nicest spot and then stay there, maybe on a farm someone else is managing. Even if it were hard work, I would have a purpose. Story 11. Use some of it for graduate school tuition and living costs during that time, and set aside $50,000 as an emergency fund in a combination of cash and bond mutual funds. Open an individual retirement account and contribute the maximum amount each year, and invest the rest in a few index funds. Alternatively, I may not have gone to graduate school and just followed the rest of the plan while working part-time jobs, 20 to 30 hours a week, and working as minimally as possible without being homeless in a low-cost or medium-cost living area. This would probably be near a large university with a good campus town, living frugally, and just coasting by letting the interest accrue until I retire at 67 while collecting Social Security. What a life! Living the dream similar to those trust fund babies without having to please parents. Being lazy and carefree. Maybe buy a van and travel doing seasonal work. Live like Coast early retirement. Story 12. Seeing as to how I'm turning 20 in 2 days, I'm not exactly sure what I would do with it. Maybe buy a cheaper house where I'm from so I don't have to do that later. Or maybe I would invest it. I'm not totally sure. Story 13. Honestly, spend it on hobbies like collecting Pokemon cards, manga, DVDs, etc. Also, maybe some more external hard drives because I was a budding data hoarder during that time too. I'm sure I would try to save money and have some sort of passive income. Story 14. Invest it in education, start a business, or put it in the market, such as stocks. Put down some to get a house with a 20-year mortgage. In Zurich, London, New York, or Los Angeles, 1 million would not go far anyways. Story 15. I'd get new necessities like a new car. Then put some into savings, some towards covering living expenses for as long as I can, while leaving some for if I had a child. This way, I could pay for their education later on or give it to them so they can start their own life when they are old enough to do so. Story 16. If I were given $1 million at 20, I would split it into 3 parts. 1 for investing in stocks and real estate, 1 for starting a business that aligns with my passions, and the last for traveling to places that challenge my perspective on life. The goal is to turn that million into a lasting legacy, not just a temporary luxury. Story 17. At 20, I would have bought a Dance Dance Revolution machine and thought I had made it in the world, with the other $995,000 sitting in the bank for miscellaneous expenses. But if I wake up and I'm 20, and it's the year 20-something, and I have the knowledge that I have now, probably the same as has been commented already, investments, Bitcoin, real estate, the same boring stuff that's repeated in every conversation. Story 18. My 20-year-old naive self would have spent it on nice cars, women, and drugs. If my 53-year-old self could go back knowing what I know now, it would be investments, education, and some international travel. But mostly investments. Story 19. 20-year-old me might have gotten smart and turned it over to a few different financial advisors, but there is a chance I would have blown it on a big house and a Bentley. Story 20. Back then, I probably would have quickly burned through it trying to build a video game company. I was also too generous. I probably would have often invited friends to restaurants or to travel and things like that. There's a chance my parents would have tried to force me to save a portion of it. They were interested in long-term savings and having alternatives to improve state pensions. Story 21. 1. Donate a portion. Save some for retirement. Invest some. Use some to hire tutors to learn everything I've always wanted. Travel and experience the world. Get the job I always wanted with training from tutors. Have many children to create the family I always wanted. Use money to help children succeed in life. Story 22. Knowing what I know now, buy a large amount of Bitcoin, invest in secure storage, and then sell it all before the government starts taxing it. Not knowing what I know now, make a ton of stupid mistakes. Story 23. At 20, I would have wasted most, if not all, of it. The sensible thing is to invest, first in yourself by getting a good education, and secondly in some conservative investments that will provide economic security. Story 24. I always said, even as a teenager, that I would buy as many properties as I could and rent them all out. The only issue, though, is in my area that would be enough for about 2, maybe 3 properties. But I reckon that would be enough to make me a good monthly living and pay for the 4th property's mortgage, which would be my house. Story 25. I would pay any debts off, buy a house in cash, put a month of expenses in checking, a year in a high-yield savings account, and the rest in low-cost diversified index funds. Max out contributions for a 401k, individual retirement accounts, health savings accounts, and cruise into financial independence, retire early. Story 26. Take a couple of $1,000s and just blow it. Get it out of your system. Buy a small immediate annuity to keep some cash in my pocket. Buy a large deferred annuity so I will never be broke again. Story 27. Well, I would probably be imprudent about it at 20, but if I can act in hindsight as a more mature person, I would definitely invest it. I would try to get a job with a good 401k, specifically a Roth 401k. I want to maximize investment into that. I will then get a Roth individual retirement account and max that out. The cash will let me allocate wages into this. Roth accounts let you leverage time and gains without the later tax loss of accrued wealth. Then the remainder will be allocated into taxable investments because even a Standard & Poor's 500 index is a 10% gain every year on average, even if you do nothing else with the money. You can look at 2 times and 3 times leveraged Standard & Poor's and on average around double that gain. You'll pay tax on gains, but the gains are easy and significant, and you don't even have to care about the market because those are automatically managed. You can explore other avenues, but you have to be careful. A million doesn't go very far this way, and the reward is slow, but you can buy a house or two and turn them into rental properties. Their payback might be 15 to 20 years, even if you pay cash for the house, but you can buy new or nearly new houses and rent them, and you have these properties that generate $5,000 to $6,000 a month every month later in their life in pure profit. The current housing market isn't great, but if you can pay cash for houses, you at least save a couple of $100,000 in lost interest costs. Owning a home isn't necessarily better than investing and renting at a cheaper cost. There is a slight benefit to home ownership, and only if you sell the home in the end to create the slight gain. Housing is so expensive now that it's a tough sell, even as a rental scheme. The dollars still work, but the value is much less than just 10 years ago. There was a chance to fix this. Kamala Harris was campaigning on housing cost reduction, and the population had a chance to pull these costs down and make home ownership viable again, not just for self, but also for a business model. But we just threw it away. A real shame. So right now, most of your value is going to be in exploring tax-avoiding methods for wealth growth. This, even with $1 million, means getting a job with a 401k or similar. There are other types. Investing in a Roth 401k, investing in a Roth individual retirement account, and getting that wealth growth early, and it's tax-free growth, which is very powerful. You can also do backdoor Roth strategies and allocate more cash and let that pile of cash grow. Your second step is to live well below your means, and I mean well below your job wage means, not your wealth means. If you can live a lean lifestyle, you can accrue wealth and use that pile of money productively. Start a business. Hire people to build something for you to sell, product or service. Build new revenue streams. Do not spend that million on lifestyle. Spend that money on new revenue streams. This is the one thing most people do not have the luxury for. Most people don't have the disposable income to build new revenue streams. $1 million lets you try some, and if they pay off, you now have extra revenue paths in addition to your normal job and wages. Your goal should be to build up several revenue streams and use that million smartly. The 401k and individual retirement account will have you set for retirement no matter how that other stuff plays out. But it's that other stuff that can let you live a life well beyond your employable means or even the means of acquiring $1 million, which unfortunately actually isn't that much in this modern age. Story 28. Realistically, at age 20, I probably would have made poor choices with it. Most likely, I would have bought a house, bought a new vehicle, bought a motorcycle, thrown a giant party, taken my friends on vacation, blown it on unnecessary cosmetic procedures because I had low self-esteem, and ended up in more debt than I had before the $1 million. 20-year-olds are mostly not wise. I, as a 20-year-old, was particularly not wise. As a 39-year-old, here's what I would do with $1 million now. 1. Pay off my debts. Seek out a financial advisor. Set up a trust. Increase my son's college fund to something that will actually help pay for college. Let my money earn money so I have something to retire on. Keep working my job, but without the stress of paying bills. Make it a point to take one real vacation every year. Story 29. Well, based on my investment history, I would have invested 15 million of it across a lot of different stocks and doubled it. So by now, I would have 35 million minus taxes, college, and whatever amount I spent on a family vacation, because my mom always wanted to go to Hawaii. I would also rebuild the house and have my grandparents move in with us. At that point, I would have enough for others to be interested in managing my money, which I would accept. From there, I would continue living frugally until I got my Doctor of Philosophy, after which I would make cool stuff and relax. Story 30. House. Probably only about $250,000 on the house. Under $80,000 on a good reliable car, just round it to $100,000 and pay off debts. Totaling around $400,000, so I would have $600,000 to invest, and I would do so in real estate or property. 100 acres of land with 100 tiny homes, one on each acre. Charge people $50,000 to purchase the home or as rentals at $500 monthly. As rentals, if you had $600,000 invested in the plan, you would make your money back in a year. Selling them, you would profit $4.4 million. Story 31. What would I have done with it at 20? Beyond any doubt, I would have blown it on nonsense and have nothing to show for it. What would I do if I had my current understanding of the world at 20, but not, say, knowledge of future events to bet on or invest in? Buy a house and put the rest in certificates of deposit, and reinvest every time they matured. Story 32. I would have gone to as many fortune tellers as possible to give me the name of my future wife. As many meaning if the same name came up, I would know to avoid her. Story 33. Buy myself a home in a modest neighborhood and do some renovations, going off-grid with a combination of solar, wind, and geothermal energy. That would probably take up at least half of the million. I would invest the other half in a mildly aggressive stock portfolio that would ideally generate enough to cover the mortgage, living expenses, and retirement. $1 million sounds like a lot, but it's kind of the Austin Powers Dr. Evil $1 million extortion threat. Story 34. At 20, I think I would have spent it all and be in exactly the same place I am now at 37, which is upper middle class and happy. But I would hope that I would have been too scared to spend a penny of it, so I would have locked it away in some high-interest savings account.